Cyrus.
Hi, Cyrus.
Nice to see you. Great pleasure.
Oh, that's with the camera. Oh.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I didn't understand.
It's been a great pleasure. Let's talk about inflation and UBI worldwide, and of course, taxing Wall Street. I think that's probably the way to do it.
I am certainly on board with taxing Wall Street.
We got to move you through though. Sorry, we got a line today.
Thank you.
I
Great
love
pleasure.
it.
See you again.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Cyrus Hojati. We are here at the Andrew Yang event here in the Springs Preserve of Las Vegas.
So this campaign is about showing America that it's not immigrants that are causing these economic problems. It is technology. And that we can come together on meaningful solutions like the freedom dividend, which would put $1,000 in the hands of every American adult starting at age 18. How does that sound to you all, Las Vegas?
Hello, everyone. We are here with
Miles.
Miles. Okay, and what brings you here today?
Andrew Yang, he knows what the best policies are. They're on his website. He's the most transparent candidate. And I really think, and I think most people are going to think that he is definitely the best choice. He knows how automation is going to really, really do a number on society, especially our society here in the USA, which is obviously there is a lot of driving jobs. So once fully self-driving cars and trucks are on roads, once all the regulations, everything's approved for that.
You all know I'm not a politician, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a problem solver. I was looking up a bunch of numbers before I came out here today. Yeah, math, that's true. Andrew Yang loves his math. And you all know I'm concerned about the impact of technology on the economy, where I worked at an organization that I started, Venture for America, that helped create thousands of American jobs. And I became convinced the reason why Donald Trump won in 2016 was that we'd automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa. And we're about to do the same thing to a lot of other jobs, including many jobs right here in Nevada. Now, I was looking up how Nevada fits into this picture. Did you all know that Nevada is the #1 state out of all 50 for jobs that are going to be displaced by technology and automation? Did you all know that? And you look at the jobs that comprise the Nevada economy: retail, gaming, hospitality, call centers, trucking and transportation. All of those jobs are highly subject to robots and new technologies. I don't know if you saw the recent headlines that MGM recently told all of their bartenders are going to be replaced by robot bartenders. How many, raise your hand if you saw that headline? Yeah, some of you probably know people who are affected by that. And in most of the rest of the country, that literally reads like a science fiction headline. That's like a haha, like Onion, parody, funny, interesting. But for you all, it's real life. For MGM, it's real life. MGM ran the numbers, and they said, if we replace that bartender with a robot, that's going to pay for itself in a matter of months. And so you all are ground zero for the automation wave. You all understand it more naturally and deeply than most of the rest of the country. If I go to other parts of the country and say, hey, automation wave coming, like some of them are like, you know, well, won't there be new jobs that get created? Won't just this be just like the other times in American history?
There's going to be UBI, which will be needed. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to desperately need that. And also, that's his main flagship proposal, policy that he's running on. Okay. And everything else, all of his other policies they go from like good to great. Yang2020.com.
Very good point. I think that we are going to see not just driving jobs automated. DMV people is going to be at risk. Certain lawyers are going to be at risk. People who pave parking lots because cars are going to be shared. They're not going to be owned, so there's no need to really park them. And the people who build the parking lots and the structures and everything else. Whether it is people who give parking tickets, people who sell cars.
And I tried to break it down to them, like, yo, like not everyone is sitting here in the Silicon Valley in like this nice air-conditioned office, you know what I mean? Like only 8% of Americans work in STEM fields, 92% don't. And so we're selling these fantasies that everyone's going to become a software engineer. It's totally not reality. And the reason I'm here with you all tonight is that Nevada is not only ground zero this automation wave, but you're also ground zero for the 2020 election. Now, the parade is just getting started. All the presidential candidates are going to come here and say, hey, Nevada, we love you. We need your help. We need you to caucus for us. We need you to vote. And how many presidential candidates have you seen before me? Like, raise your hand if I'm the first. Oh, I love it. I love it. Second. Third.
First in lifetime.
First in a lifetime. I love it. How many of you didn't like politics until just now?
Maybe even gas station clerks. A lot of companies, a lot of workers are going to be in threat. And that's probably about 10, 20, 30% of the workforce. So much of America's economy is based on automobile travel, whether it's valet services. And he just admitted that Nevada is the highest ranking state. Now, here's what really gets me, is that how's Nevada going to look like in 30 years? Could we see more people? Could we see a lot of people leave the state because the jobs are going to be automated? Or could we see more people come in because the cost of living can be reasonably low because they realize, well, I can still live $1,000 here in Las Vegas versus $1,000 in San Francisco. And then if technology makes it easier to go to San Francisco in a few minutes,
we cannot discount the possibility that Andrew Yang just grows and grows and grows. And that is the way it's going to play out. Because I'm getting Democrats and progressives. Go ahead and clap if that resembles you. Democrats and progressives. I'm getting independents. I'm getting libertarians. I'm getting Donald Trump supporters and voters. No, it's fine. There are always Donald Trump supporters. I just talked to, and this warmed my heart, I just talked to a married couple that said that last time he went for Trump, she went for Hillary, they fought about it all the time, and now this time they're both going for me, and Herman has to go for my house. And you know, if you had $1,000 a month, what would you spend it on? Go ahead, shout something out. He's trying out marijuana. He's not really Sure, some of it would happen. But a lot of it would get spent right here in your community. It would make your families and businesses and neighborhoods stronger and more vital. And some of that money would float back up to the big tech companies that are in the process of automating away jobs, and that's okay, as long as we get the money first, you know? How is it that Jeff Bezos and Amazon, well, Jeff Bezos probably paid more than this, but Amazon, how much did Amazon pay in federal taxes in 2018? Zero. How much did you all pay in federal taxes? More than zero. And Amazon's worth $1 trillion. How is it possible that $1 trillion tech company paid less in federal tax than you all? You know, and they're like high-fiving each other, being like, another job, another year of zero taxes, well done. And what I say is like, look, that's not their fault, that's our fault. We must have really screwed up if that company's paying zero in taxes. So what we do is we get the money back from Amazon and the gang, bring it back to you all, and build a trickle-up economy. From people and families and communities up. It's not left, it's not right, it's forward. And so this is the plan, this is how we can help bring our country back together. Donald Trump's our president today in part because he got the problems correct. If you remember in 2016, he went around saying, we've got problems, we've got problems. And then the Democratic response was, no, we don't, things are great. And then unfortunately, he won. He had the better case. So he pointed out the problems and he got them essentially correct. Our life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years because of drug overdoses and suicides. American society is struggling, but unfortunately his solutions were the exact opposite of what we need. What were his solutions? We're going to build a wall, we're going to turn the clock back, we're going to bring back the jobs, and we need to do the exact opposite of all of that. We need to turn the clock forward. We need to start accelerating both our economy and society. And I am the man to beat Donald Trump in 2020 because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math.
Basic income to really work. First of all, inflation would have to be very low. or it has to be tied to inflation. Otherwise, it's just going to be like a false hope of $1,000. It has to be pegged, or you can argue inflation will come down because the cost of production is going to obviously go down. And if you've noticed, some things have actually been falling in price, things have actually been rising in price. Another thing is UBI would have to be implemented around the world for that to really, really work. So, in other words, if UBI is only in America, and America is bringing in 1 million or 2 million people a year, green cards or many other people that are coming here, then a lot of people know from these poor cultures, well, I'm just going to come in thinking I'm going to get, the $1,000 because that's pretty good. But I say, hey, rather than giving the foreign-born $1,000 in America, you can give them $300 in some poor country. They'll have the same standard of living because everything costs less. And then, well, a lot of people who are Trump supporters or the really like extreme right Charlottesville type people, they're going to like this idea because they're going to realize, well, the incentive to come to the U.S. is going to drop, and then they can maintain their societies that they want. And so it's going to be a win-win situation. So Amazon's going to like it too because they're going to pay less in taxes if they're going to give $1,000 versus $300. So what do you think about that?
I think it's a really good idea that other countries, their governments are going to have to implement UBI. I think most advanced countries are already thinking about it, and they definitely are. It's not, in the discourse 100%, but it's going to be soon because the future is going to be very, very automated. By one estimate, I'm not sure what his name is, but he said that his prediction was, I'm not sure if it was his, but he said that by 2033, up to 40% of American jobs will be automated. So, kind of close,
Yeah.
Even if it's not that high, say it's 30% or 35%.
But depending
Still.
on the cost of living and depending on, let's say, how many percent get automated, some may argue that if we have a lot, then we can give them $2,000. And with $2,000, that's $4,000. And you can argue that that can support a family of 4 here in Las Vegas. So this is where it gets to the point, because the cost of living would have to be very, very low. And we have to understand that transportation is going to get very likely to be cheaper because of improvements of mass transit, self-driving, not even cars, but scooters. Because I'm going out of this building myself. Why would I need a car when I can just get on a scooter, a 3-wheeler or whatever? And then you can argue that, well, look at a lot of the things that we spend on. Housing. Housing can be 20% of the income. Some cases, 60% of the income. But again, why am I being provided like a 900 square foot 1-bedroom apartment when I'm only using a tiny fraction of it? Well, maybe because we don't know the good ideas, or it's because zoning laws are really the problem. So if you look at San Francisco, they're doing innovative ideas, making into these micro apartments 300 square foot units. Then we can do that here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And we can have rents bring all the way down to $300. Plus see is going to be automated. So now that $1,000 is going to give you a lot.
Yes, I like that idea a lot. I think it's going to have to come down to that pretty soon in a lot of places. Yeah, just a very small little like capsule, super miniature apartment, section for one person, and it being a low amount.
So there are critics that say, okay, this is a welfare program, and one of the issues that I have with welfare, it incentivizes very poor immigrants to come here. Now you can argue that they don't take welfare, but some people do. And it also incentivizes women to be single moms and not have nuclear families, and then we see a lot of problems result as moms becoming single and having 2-3 children. Children are not raised properly. Women are ultimately depressed. So I believe that for basic income to really work is that maybe if you're a single mom, you're going to get $800, but if you are, let's say, marrying someone with a nuclear family, we're going to give you $2,200, $2,300, because now not only the guy is there to protect you, which you can argue that reduces costs because you pay less in taxes if you live together and so forth, but it encourages nuclear families, because this is one of the criticism that's been made about the welfare system, that it is incentivizing a lot of horrible things. And some people argue we have to abolish welfare, but as time moves on, we are going to have some government program if there's not enough jobs, period. Otherwise, society is going to be in chaos.
The thing is, the one thing that I've seen a lot online is that, do we want a Star Trek type future, or do we want a Mad Max type future? And if there's not a UBI, a lot of people don't realize that what is going to be happening to all these jobs soon. And you know, obviously Trump was a little sneaky, and he said jobs, jobs, jobs. And of course, Democrats only had Hillary Clinton, who's kind of artificial and fake.
And you could argue she cheated the nomination. I believe she did it in Nevada too, with the Harry Reids and the Culinary Union. But anyway, the point I want to make is that we have to, yes, look into the future. Now, some people are arguing, well, maybe this should be the end of money. Because we could be, but they're talking, the Zeitgeist movement, the Venus Project have talked about this, and we can't see this in 30 to 50 years. It's going to probably happen in my lifetime. I'm only 26, but it's interesting. You see, you're brought in this world, and you really see how things work. But the question is, I think that if automation keeps pricking in, and we have an immigrant, and even their children, they're realizing they have no jobs, they'll realize, okay, with UBI implemented in the Philippines, Mexico, China, all these other countries, then I can go live in Philippines, there's less language and cultural barriers, I can have the same standard of living, but this could result in America losing 40, 50 million people.
Yeah.
And you can argue that that is not a good thing, but you can argue that if America loses a lot of people, there will be less crowding, there will be less competition, and then real estate's going to crash too. Because they argue that immigration is not just having an impact on wages, but the customer base of lawyers, housing developers, the list goes on. Because a greedy developer wants immigration because they know more people are going to be more buying of homes. But you can argue, well, that's not necessarily good of society because that creates crowding, environmental issues. But anyway, I have to point out, I really admire this guy because he cares about what works, not about feelings and pumping government programs, which is designed to get votes. So, anyway, last words?
Yeah. Yang 2020.
All right, thank you so much. Great pleasure. Take care.
So I want to know, what would you say to your critics who would suggest that by allowing freedom dividends will make individuals not look for work, paying them $1,000 a month? So what would you say to your critics?
You know what's fantastic is I really haven't gotten this objection that much around the country. And because Americans know that we like to work, and that the people that, if you gave people $1,000 a month, people would probably work as much or more. And the numbers bear that out. There are two groups of people that work less if you give them $1,000 a month. And those two groups are new mothers who spend more time with their children, and teenagers who spend more time in high school and graduate at higher levels. And I don't think we're mad at either of those. Everyone else works as much or more, and if you have $1,000 a month, it would end up circulating in our economy and creating more work in our communities. The other big thing is I talk about my wife a fair amount. My wife is with our two boys right now, one of whom is autistic. And what does the market value her work at every day? Zero. What does GDP value her work at? Zero. And so putting $1,000 a month into people's hands doesn't keep us from working. Oftentimes it ends up recognizing the work that we are already doing that is going completely ignored in our market economy every day. And if the Democratic Party is going to talk about empowering women, I'm going to suggest that there's nothing better we could do than put $1,000 a month into everyone's hands, because that would help millions of American women improve their situations from exploitative and abusive jobs and relationships. So the Democratic Party can talk about empowering women, or we can do something about it, and I think we should do something about it.
Next question. What makes you a better candidate than all the rest of the candidates that are running?
Well, certainly, I don't have any bones about anyone supporting another candidate. I mean, I supported another candidate before I started running for president this time, and his name was Bernie Sanders. You know, I liked Bernie. We owe him a great debt. And I think that I've met most of the other candidates who are running. I have to say, one of the fun things about running for president is you actually meet the other candidates. What happens is you're in a green room and you're hanging out together, and they're just like, "Hey, what's up, Beto?" And so, like, I like and admire most of the other candidates, except for that one. I'm kidding. And I think that I'm running for president because I have a vision for how to improve our lives, and I also have a clear sense of the problems on the ground. Where when I talk about the fact that the 5 most common jobs in the economy are administrative and clerical work, including call centers, retail, and sales, and 30% of American malls and stores are closing. How many of you all notice stores closing where you live, right? 30% of stores are closing, and the most common job in this state is working in retail. And the average retail worker is a 39-year-old woman making between $10 and $12 an hour. And you know when that store closes, what's that worker's next move going to be? Number 3 is food service and food preparation. Number 4 is truck driving and transportation. And my friends in Silicon Valley are working on trucks that can drive themselves. How many of you all have friends in technology? You know what I'm talking about. Where you talk to them and say, "Hey, what are you working on?" A lot of them are like, "Oh, I'm trying to, you know, like get rid of a lot of jobs." And if you ask them, like, "How do you feel about that?" They're like, "I don't feel good about it." And so these are the real challenges, and most of our politicians, for whatever reason, are not able to acknowledge what's happening. And part of it's because they don't understand technology for the most part. Some of them don't understand the way the different pieces of our economy fit together. So I believe that I'm laser focused on solving the problems that got Donald Trump elected, and I'm uniquely able to bring in supporters from all parts of the political spectrum. Right now, the Democrats' #1 priority is beating Donald Trump. I am the candidate who's going to beat Donald Trump solid. And he even called it himself at a rally a number of months ago. He said, "I cannot wait to run against all these Democrats. My only concern is that some new figure comes out of nowhere that no one's ever heard of. That's the only thing I worry about." We're going to make his words true. We're going to make Donald Trump look very, very prophetic in just a year or so.
So let's talk about Medicare for all. So as we know what's going on in the news and the conversation, Medicare is becoming insolvent sooner by 2026. What are your plans to champion that?
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about this because I understand the numbers, and anyone who looks at what's going on in our healthcare system knows that we're spending twice as much as other countries to worse results. If you run a business, you know that our healthcare system makes it harder to hire people. It makes it harder to treat them like a full-time employee. You just treat them as a gig worker. It makes it harder for all of us to switch jobs. If you ever think about starting a business, it makes it much harder to start a business because you're concerned about your healthcare. And so people talk about how are you going to pay for it. It's like we're already paying for it in so many different ways. And the worst part is if we get sick or injured, we're more stressed out about navigating our system than we are actually getting well or getting our loved ones well. And so there's so much waste and excess in the system right now. And one example I'll use is just prescription drug prices. It's like, you've all seen these crazy prices just come out of nowhere, and it's like, hey, we just increased the price 400%. Any reason? No. Like, you know, like, can you afford it? Like, you can't? Well, it's cool. We'll find someone else who'll. And then Americans are making terrible choices where they have to choose between their medications and food and shelter, or like clothing their kids, or, you know, it's just like terrible, terrible choices. And you look at it and you say, it does not need to be this way. It does not need to be this way because right now we've got this entire industry just frankly profiteering off of our backs. And so if you rationalize the costs, you can get the access up and the prices down and make it so that Medicare does not go broke, because right now Medicare is not even allowed to negotiate drug prices. Like, can you imagine, you're like the biggest buyer in the country, which you are, Medicare, and then the drug company's like, here, we're gonna charge you like $50 a month for this pill. And you just have to take it. Of course you're gonna go bankrupt if you're just like, what, I'm just gonna pay whatever the drug company tells me to pay. And then when someone suggested, you know what, Medicare should actually try and negotiate lower prices on the American people, Congress blocked that rule because of lobbying from the drug companies. So when you start looking at the numbers, you realize that we are spending so much more than we have to, and as soon as we rationalize costs, we can make it so that Medicare is not only solvent, but we can expand health care for all Americans.
I want to talk about human-centered capitalism. Why do we need a new form of capitalism?
I refer back to my wife and GDP. How many of you all got excited about GDP when you woke up this morning? We're like, oh, I'm gonna make a big contribution today. I can feel it. Like, of course not, that's absurd. But GDP is the way we measure our economic growth. We made it up almost 100 years ago, and it's driving us off a cliff because GDP is at record highs while our life expectancy is declining. I mean, which one do you care more about? And so one of the great things I can do as president that's actually easier than a lot of the other stuff, is after I'm president in 2021, thanks to you all, thank you, Nevada, I'm going to go down the street to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and I'm going to say, hey, GDP, really old, really out of date, kind of stupid. We'll keep it, but we're also going to broaden it and include it as a basket of measurements for our economic progress. And the other factors, the other measurements are going to be things we actually care about, like mental health and freedom from substance abuse, like clean air and clean water, like how our kids are doing, like average income and affordability, health and life expectancy. If you had those as your measurements, then you'd actually see how we're doing, and you'd see how much we've been struggling over this last number of years. Mm-hmm. And I'll present these statistics every year to you all at the State of the Union. I'll be the first president to use a PowerPoint deck at the State of the Union and just start going through the numbers. Instead of these bizarre theater performances we're currently subject to that I'm finding increasingly unwatchable. I mean, like, we might as well, it's like, look, I'll just give you the real stats and be like, hey, 8 Americans are dying of drugs every hour. That's horrifying, so let's get that down by 50% over the next 4 years, and here's how we're gonna do it. And then next year, I'll tell you how we're doing. You know, it's like, you would actually be like, oh, I'm gonna see how we're doing. And then, the tricky part then becomes driving corporate behavior to actually improve these variables. So that if you have a company that, let's say, helps kids get stronger or gets people off of drugs, that they can somehow be rewarded for that behavior in ways other than good PR. Like, you can actually give them tax breaks based upon doing something that drives this new set of economic measurements forward. So I'm very passionate about this. It sounds a little bit esoteric, but it's actually fundamental. Because if you have the wrong measurements, you are doomed. You know, you can never make any improvements. So what we have to do is we have to start measuring the right things, then drive our own behavior. And the great thing is then you'd all be excited. If I came back to you and said, hey, we brought drug overdoses down by 50%, you'd be like, that's incredible. Like, I'm really excited about that. In a way that's like, hey, GDP hit a record high, you'd be like, who cares? You know what I mean? It's like, no one's going around being like, GDP. GDP doesn't make any sense.
Okay, and I have one more question, and then we're gonna engage the audience, and we're gonna ask questions from them. So, the country is facing so many challenges due to nationalism. What are your plans to bring this country back together since Donald Trump has created a huge racial divide?
I grew up Asian, as you probably noticed. Like, the perspective I have as someone who grew up, Asian American in a predominantly white suburb in upstate New York, is that people notice what race you are all the time. Like, that's not like the problem. The problem is like, so the question is like, why is this tension you're describing, does it seem to be getting worse? And the reason to me is very clear, that we're making our population increasingly economically insecure. where 78% are living paycheck to paycheck, 57% can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. They look up, they see these soulless corporations that are getting rid of their jobs. They look at their kids and they're like, I'm not sure how the heck I'm gonna afford college because it got 2.5 times more expensive somehow, even though it didn't get 2.5 times better. And then in that sort of environment, then you might expect some tribalism to pick up. And then if some person comes and says, hey, it's the immigrants, like we need to blame them, then you're like, well, at least someone's like presenting some explanation, you know? It's like that's like the, but the climate is what drives it all, is that if you have this pervasive economic insecurity, it's a mindset of scarcity that people have a hard time combating or escaping. It's true about climate change too. If you go to an American who can't pay their bills and say, hey, we need to worry about climate change, they'll look at you like, I can't pay my bills. The penguins can wait. You know, and that's not blaming them, that's just humanity. It's like, it's all of us in a mindset of scarcity. So here's something we can actually control. We can actually control this economic boot that's on our throats, and we can get it off. After I'm president, everyone knows if the anonymous Asian man who wants to give everyone money becomes president, you know I'm gonna secure that bag and get you that money. So then we get you the money, everyone's like, holy cow, the government did something I actually love. And then this mindset of scarcity gets replaced, at least in some measure, by a mindset of abundance. And then the tribalism and tension starts going down, because if you look at someone and see the difference, then instead of seeing the difference and getting somehow like angry about it, you see the difference and you feel a sense of like peace and fellowship and curiosity. But you can't try and change the culture without actually getting the boot off of people's throats. So that is my mission.
Phenomenal. And then we have some questions from the audience, and this question is from Pam. What is the biggest issue to change the minds of people who are entrenched in the current political system? How do you change belief to fact in the minds of people?
Where's Pam? I just want to be able to see. Hey, Pam. How you doing? Well, Pam, I've had this invigorating journey running for president this past number of months, where I'm very confident that there's this enormous appetite among Americans for real talk about solutions that will actually move us forward. And that's on both sides of the aisle. It's one reason why this campaign's doing so well and it's going to keep doing well, is that that politicians are kind of stuck in their particular discussion modes, and a lot of Americans are like, wait a minute, this doesn't actually seem to solve my problem. And then they hear me and they're like, ooh, like that's not everything, but it's, you know, $1,000 in cash actually makes more sense to me than a lot of these other things. And so I've actually found people on both sides of the aisle very, very receptive. I'm going to suggest something about what happened with the Republicans, really just the election of 2016. So you remember this. It's hard to remember, but bear with me. It's 2016, Donald Trump declares that he's running for president. Now, what was he polling at that point? 2%, 0, 1, 2%. It was not like, oh, Donald Trump, he's going to be president. That was not the reaction. It was like, Donald Trump, like, ha, ha, ha. And there were 17 Republicans running for president. You guys remember this? Jeb Bush was the favorite. Yeah. No, this is all true. Yeah, please clap, Jeb. I mean, Jeb seems like a good man. So, but I'm just taking down a trip down memory lane. It's like 2016. It seems like so. No, 2015. So you have 17 Republicans running for president. You have Donald Trump, and then Donald Trump starts running the table because he's talking about things in a different way than the other 16 candidates, and he kept railroading Republican orthodoxy. He's like, you know, free trade, like kind of a bad deal. And the Republicans were like, he just bashed free trade, like that's it, his campaign's over. And his campaign just kept growing. You guys remember this? Remember this? And then like the other 16 were like, ha, like how dare he like talk about free trade that way. And so he just kept on growing because the Republican Party and the American people had kind of lost confidence in the Republican Party's ideas. And so then when Donald Trump called them into question, people were like, yeah, that's actually, like, that sounds more compelling. I hate to say it, but the Democratic Party is in need of some new ideas. And so what's going to happen is there are going to be 19 or 20 of us running, and I'm already one of only 6 Democrats to qualify for the Democratic primary debates in June and July. because we're polling and we've got more than 100,000 donors around the country. So I'm going to be on a debate stage in June and July, and the American people are going to turn on their TVs, and they're going to say, who the heck is that guy? And then to say, wait, he said a few things that I really kind of liked. Like, I'm going to Google him. It's like Andrew Yang, and then, like, you know, they'll find out, like, where I am. And so what happened with the Republican Party and their frankly, their need for, like, a new set of ideas is going to happen to the Democratic Party this time. And the other candidates are going to sound kind of similar to each other. And then there's going to be Andrew Yang. And the American people are going to be like, ooh, and what's going to happen is the field's going to shrink. And then as the field shrinks, like, I'm just going to keep on being there and advancing through every debate, like from June, July, September, October, like the whole way through until I arrive here in Nevada for you all to vote for me in February of 2020.
Yes, this question is from Corey Brown. What parts of the Green New Deal do you agree with?
Where's Corey?
I'm over here.
Hey Corey, how's it going, man? So I agree with the fundamental vision of the Green New Deal that we should move towards renewable energy sources, and that's not going to happen on its own. Like, the government needs to make a pretty big set of pushes because those energy forms are more expensive and not economically competitive right now. So the only way to get there is for the government to put incentives in place and big resources to work. The timeline, 12 years, very aggressive. You know, I think I applaud the vision. Like, I'm for most all of the particulars of the Green New Deal, with the recognition that, you know, it's going to be a huge lift for us to even start moving in that direction. And Nevada, in many ways, again, is a microcosm of this, where someone asked me today about the potential of solar panels here in Nevada. It's obviously vast. We just have sunshine to spare. And you're talking about, like, you know, you put a bunch of solar panels out. The couple things that I differ with the Green New Deal on, number one is this link to economic scarcity, is that if we can put more money into people's hands, then I think that we'll actually get more energy around the Green New Deal. The second thing is that Americans have this tendency to talk about climate change as if we're 100% of global emissions. And then if we cut back, then all emissions will go down. But we are only 15% of global emissions. We could cut our emissions in half, and it would probably only marginally decrease the rate of climate change. Now, of course, I would try and help other countries move in the same direction, but the reality is they're in different points in their development than we are, and a lot of them are going to use fossil fuels and the rest of it. And there's not much we can do just to be like, you can't use that if you're like a developing country. So the last 4 years have been the 4 warmest years in recorded history. I mean, that's also true fact. So you don't need to be like the world's greatest scientist to sense that something is up and that we're heading in this direction where it's going to become realer and nastier for many, many Americans. I don't know if you all were personally affected by the forest fires. Probably not. I think they happened to my friends in California more so. But it's all related. It's all tied together. Because if you have less moisture in a forest, the forest gets drier. And then, like, when you have fires, they get like bigger and harder to control. So we're going to have to start investing in better infrastructure, better management of our natural resources. It's going to be expensive even just to stay still. But that's to me the right move. We have to start investing billions of dollars in our infrastructure